Welcome to Sports Save My Life. My name is Clayton Freck, and I'm the CEO and founder of Angel City Sports. We know the power of sport to change and, in some cases, save lives. We hear these compelling stories every day, and we created this show to share them with the world. Enjoy the show, and remember to like, follow, share, and comment.
Well, today I am really excited to talk to Leah Coryell, who joined the Army straight out of high school at the age of 18. A year later is diagnosed with MS. And I find her journey so fascinating. We're going to fill in all the blanks during the show. But she didn't find her sport, archery, until 2015 when she's in her mid 50s and goes on to become an elite archer, which is so cool. She's, as I understand it, you'll correct me, you're the first female W1, which is like a classification archer to make the U.S. Paralympic team. And you competed in the Rio Paralympic Games. You've done a bunch of other international competitions representing the red, white, and blue. Yes. And, you know, maybe what's even more meaningful for you, and probably even from my perspective, is that you're a real leader and advocate in the veterans community, which I think is, there's just so much to be done there. And lastly, she joined us really for the first time, I think, at the Angel City Virtual Games last year, helping us coach and mentor athletes, and recently led a sort of multi-session program around life planning, which I think is super cool. And I'm bummed I missed it, but I'm gonna have to catch the video recordings. And Leah brings just a kindness and a sort of compassionate energy to everything she does. She genuinely wants the best for everyone around her. And that's why we love having her as part of the Angel City family. Leah, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yes. So you're zooming in from where today? Where are you?
Holman, Wisconsin. It's right on the Mississippi River, kind of between La Crosse and Eau Claire.
Okay.
And it's,
great.
It's really cold here. Really cold here.
Yes. We were just talking about the -0 concept a second ago, which is super funny. So as we get started, our show, we call it Sports Save My Life, just right down the middle, right? What comes to mind for you when I say that?
Well, it rings true. Absolutely. 100%. I think that, the way I got into adaptive sports, even though I am a vet with service-connected, I have multiple sclerosis, didn't end up in the chair though till I was like 45. Okay. But what brought me into it more was I worked at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee with post 9/11 GI Bill kids coming back from Afghanistan, Iraq, from the service, trying to find their footing in the educational setting, because I'm an educator by trade. And those kids that came back, most of them, the ones that I worked directly with, were young men. The women were pretty squared away, but these guys were like clueless. And it was awesome because they were so excited to be in the classroom instead of in the sandbox. And the more I worked with them and the more I learned about it, and I'm working on my graduate degree in cognition and learning after combat. What does that look like? What does that look like in the classroom? What does that look like on the job site? What does that look like in a relationship, both, as a husband and as a father? And as a community member? How does that all play together? Right. And, it doesn't, obviously I worked with student vets that had physical challenge that you could see.
Sure.
But there were many, many more that you could not see it. And it was devastating, absolutely devastating. So one of the first things I did was enact basketball leagues and soccer leagues and volleyball leagues for the vets. And some of them we did in the morning before classes even started because the whistles were too much.
Oh, just like when the gym.
All the whistling, and the blaring of the horn and that, we're like, we don't have to do that. We can do it a different way. But when I was, let's see, I think 2015. Yeah, 2015. I've had MS since I was 19 years old. Right. And it was called relapse remitting, which means it comes and it goes. I struggled a little bit. The older I got, the chunkier I got, the harder it was, depending on what was going on in my life. My kids' dad and I split when they were really little. So I was a single mom for a long time. And when I ended up, one day I was really, really sick, ended up in the hospital. The doctors came in and they said, you don't have relapse remitting anymore. You have progressive MS. and it's never going to
So
get
there's
better.
sort of different. We're a little ahead of ourselves, but there's different paths of MS, right? So you could have one that maybe is intermittent, more intermittent,
Yes.
and then one that is just kind of a steady decline. So I think the most of us probably are more when we know more about the progressive, or at least that's what gets the
Yes.
more attention, right? Got it. Okay, cool. So yeah, I want to really get into that because I do think that that is a segment of the population that doesn't participate in adaptive sports as much as it could, and so I want to dig into that in a little bit. Um, give me who is Leah Coryell? Give me one sentence that describes you.
Leah Coryell is a success-driven rebel, a leader, a mentor, and an educator.
Was the word was it rebel?
People say I'm resilient. I'm not resilient. I can give you my spiel on that in a bit. I'm not resilient. I'm rebellious, because when people don't have standards, when people don't hold you to a standard because they think you can't meet it, then you become a rebel, because you're overriding what they think. So I don't know if it's so much resilience as it is rebellion. Like, watch me.
I love that. And I see that a lot, right, in our
Yes.
community, which is, count us out and we'll come roaring back in your face.
Exactly.
So it's reverse psychology, or whatever we want to say. All right. So we're going to go all the way back to the beginnings. But before we do that, what's one, you decide what the adjective is, fun, silly, whatever thing that I don't know about you, that maybe most people don't know about you?
I don't think they realize how smart I am. People
Interesting.
just take me at face value, silver-haired, chunky older woman in a wheelchair, and write me off, and they have no idea. There are a lot of gears buzzing up there.
Yes, that's beautiful. I love that. All right. So take me all the way back. Give me a sense of your childhood, right? Where were you born? Were you raised? What was going on with your family unit, your parents? What kind of a kid were you? Did you run into any trouble, any hardships, in your younger years? And then we'll jump into the military story.
Well, this will also blow your socks off, because people think I was like this childhood athlete, and I wasn't. I was a foster kid. So my mom and my biological father, in fact, on my birth certificate under occupation, it says inmate. He was already in prison by the time I was born. So in and out, we got the whole alcohol, we had the whole drugs, breaking the law. Yeah, it was a very, very chaotic, traumatic, abusive childhood. And I have altogether, my mom remarried when I was 10, but there's 4 of us that are older. My sister, Michelle, me, and I have 2 younger brothers. There were 4 kids in 5.5 years. And then later on, she remarried, and there's more children. So really, I have 5 younger brothers and 3 younger sisters, all together as a family unit. But growing up, when my mom just couldn't handle it, and a lot of it, we were homeless, sleeping on church pews, Salvation Army, donated food, or we were in foster care because she didn't have the skills, or, she has like a 6th grade education. So just didn't have what it takes to hold it on her own. And when people don't know that either.
I don't know anything about the foster care system, but so you can do it on a sort of on an interim basis, not on a permanent basis, and then you could get the kids back.
The goal of 99% of all foster care placements is reunification with the parents.
Okay, got it. So it is
unfortunately, it's not always in the best interests of the child, but it saves the state money.
Got it.
So that's where that comes from.
Okay, so how many times did it's what a wild story about your mother, just sort of find the end of the line where she had to sort of put you guys up for foster care? Did that happen multiple times?
Well, she would get sick, and then there was nobody. There was nobody there because my dad was in and out of jail, or he was drunk or whatever. He was living with other women, and we were literally the leftover kids. So they had to put us in foster care. Then she'd get her stuff together again and get another apartment. And, I never knew that sheets matched. I had no idea until I was probably
You don't know,
about
you
8.
know that what? Say that again.
Sheets matched. Like the bottom sheet matches the pillowcase. That blew my mind.
Oh,
I was like, it looks like there's a garden in this bed. The other thing I never knew either was that dishes match. That they come in sets.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, no idea. So
And so you're in and out of foster care. You're homeless.
we used to ride around on the bus because there was nowhere to go.
And this is all in Wisconsin?
Yeah, Wisconsin. A couple of times they did put us in foster care. We're just right on the Mississippi River across, but my mom always wanted us back, but she didn't always have the skills to do it on her own. So once she married my stepfather when I was 10, we never went back into foster care. But I have to say with complete honesty, our life didn't get a whole lot better other than that. It just didn't. So as a very young child, people think that I'm like this lifelong athlete. I never was on a team or a sport until I ended up on the USA archery team. That was my first sport ever. Because when you're a kid and you're a foster care kid, you get 1 pair of shoes a year. Or even if you're just a poor kid and the boys got those little brown work boots and girls in the 70s got those little saddle shoes. And the school that we went to had a new gym floor and you could not go on the gym floor unless you had tennis shoes. And we sat
You didn't even have the right equipment to play anything.
We had to sit and look at the wall. Shame on us because we didn't have tennis shoes. And It was the same way with lunch. I don't know if you ever knew anybody, in the early 70s that got free lunch. That meant we stood facing the wall while the kids that paid for lunch went first. All of them in the whole school. And then whatever was left, that's when we went in to eat. We didn't even sit at their tables. And this was in the 70s, yeah. So where you would think. That's what I mean. People are like, what? How did you, what? That's the rebel. Because as a child, nobody had any expectations of me other than to be my mother, which I'm not saying she's a bad person. I just knew that I wanted more in my life. And my brothers and sisters have done very well for themselves too. But no expectations as a child.
When do you think that rebel spirit took hold? Like, or when do you remember it? Like, do you remember a moment where you're like, I'm gonna live my life differently. I'm gonna,
Yes.
whatever, like, achieve different things.
Yes, and this is a really impactful story. So I used to fight. My brothers and I would fight a lot on the playgrounds because we were bullied, and we would never walk away. So they found that when they separated me from my brothers, they didn't fight. So I ended up, the principal said, you're going to go into the library, you're going to put your head down on that table, and you're not coming out to recess for the rest of the school year. Fine with me, I'm cold anyway. So I'd go in and put my head down, and the librarian said, you are not going to just sit there doing nothing. So, they have a reading system, the robins, the cardinals.
You had like a permanent ban from the playground.
Because I was fighting back. Imagine that. But you gotta think I was
your brother. You would fight your brothers, or you're fighting other people.
I would fight other people that were picking on my brothers because we were dirty.
Yeah.
Our clothes didn't match. We were probably stinky. We were ornery, and we smelled like an ashtray.
Right. Okay, I got you.
Oh,
you were sort of defending your brothers and sort of making a ruckus on the playground. So you're stuck in the library for the rest of recess.
Yeah. And of all places, I swear he did it because we were all terrible readers. You have the cardinals, the robins, and the sparrows, and everybody knows the sparrows are the ones that can't read very well at all. And the librarian said, you're going to help me shelve these books. I'm like, I'm a sparrow. Not me. I can't read for anything. And she said, you're going to help me. So in talking to me throughout the days, she would find out what I liked. And at that time, it was mythology. And sometimes mythology books would end up on the cart. Oh, have you seen this book? But see, when you're poor, you don't get to check out library books because there's no guarantee you're going to bring them back. No library books.
So they would discriminate against you because they knew you maybe aren't going to even come back to school and return the book.
Yes. But in that year, I think I was in probably 3rd or 4th grade, and I was at least a grade under where I should have been. But by the time I graduated from 5th grade, I was reading at a 12th grade level.
But that's self-taught, right? I mean, that's like,
Well, and the lady helped me, but it was exposure to literature and her telling me and giving me the books that showed that there's a life outside the one that I had. And I talk about that a lot in my, you know, we're an agricultural community and we have a lot of migrant workers with children in the school districts. And I've done a lot of talks with, just because you start somewhere does not mean you have to stay there. You know, and it's not disrespectful to your parents to go beyond that.
so you're in, let's say third grade, right?
Mhm.
For assumption's sake. That's really young
Yes.
to figure life out at that level.
I think, but see, the
Right?
thing is, well, yeah, but I was a
But I
smart
guess it
kid.
was like a life hard lived already, you know, but like that still seems really, I mean, I have a third grader. I know.
Yeah.
I
No,
know.
I was never a child, never. But I wrote a little.
When
Never.
you say that, what does that mean? That's such a crazy statement.
I do not remember. I do not remember ever going to bed not hungry, ever.
From your whole childhood,
Yes,
even after your mom gets remarried and you've got
because
it.
there were more kids.
So it's just a lot too much competition for food.
Exactly. So I wrote down actually why this is such a challenge for kids that come from a background like me.
Yeah.
Socioeconomic nightmare.
Right.
And it's called rising above your raising. And it is a sociological term. Rising above your raising, like not raisin, but raising, like raise up your children. So it's a belief that limits life options among people who live in poverty. It means that a child should never try to have a better socioeconomic standing than their parents. Should they succeed in school, i.e. graduate from high school or get their GED if their parent did not, or succeed in a career, like make more money or have more success in their career than their parents did, they are shunned because they're showing off, that they think they're better than the rest of their family, or they're trying to make the family look bad. It is considered disrespectful, selfish, and defiant to find success or achievement. When rebels rise, when mean, dirty, leftover, snot-nosed little kids living in poverty become insurgents by making success and achievement look like a totally badass act of rebellion. Because really, resilience is actually rebellious success, right? Especially when their success overtakes societal, educational, and cultural expectations. Knowledge is power, people. Rebel with intention.
Oh my gosh. I love that. So
that's what I mean.
You form a pretty, let's call it mature, right? Perspective on the world and yourself and your kind of your plan. Did you know you were smart back then?
Yes. Yes, I did. I think I've always had.
How? You just like, because you felt like you could kind of out clever people, like you just like knew you were like you were going to survive and sort of beat people in whatever was in front of you.
Exactly. I've been called a lot of things, devious being them, cunning being one, sly being one. And I don't think any of those are really negative things if they're a trauma response to what's going on. Sure. I just knew I've had a survival push, I swear, since my first breath. Just that push to survive. And then the more children that came beyond me, I have always been a teacher, an educator. My brothers and sisters, they were my responsibility. And as more and more of them came, they were mine. And I needed to figure out a way to get them at least to middle school.
And you're I'm sorry, I think you said it, but you were the eldest of all.
Yeah, well, I have a sister, Michelle, but she has cerebral palsy and she's probably 13 months older than I am, but I functioned as the oldest. Yes.
Got it. I got it. Okay, tell me that, because I think I could spend all whole day talking about your childhood, because it's like you're kind of blowing my mind.
It blows your mind, doesn't it?
So give me one story that like encapsulates the trauma, the dysfunctionality, the stress that you were under, so people can really understand it. Like what's that one story? Is there one like moment that was, like life-changing I'm not sure positive or negative way, but like, just like, oh my God, like, this happened and it's so out of the ordinary, because I think most of us live kind of ordinary lives, right?
Yeah, thankfully.
Like
I would have to
your
say,
life is a lot more ordinary as an adult, functioning adult, than it was as a kid. But like, what's the story that just like comes to mind?
Well, there's two and there's connected. So when I was in second or third grade with the no gym rule,
Yeah.
my teacher bought me a pair of shoes, tennis shoes, so I could go in the gym.
Gym teacher?
No, my classroom teacher, Miss McPhee, bought me a pair of, little white shoes so I could play gym. And I made this mistake of wearing them home. So my mom dragged me by my hair back to the school, and who did I think I was, better than anybody else in the whole damn town? And she doesn't need your damn charity. And if you can't provide for all of them, she's no better than anybody else. Just, humiliation. And that poor woman was humiliated.
Yeah.
Welcome to my life. So that was the beginning of it. But by fifth grade, my mom stopped going to my parent-teacher conferences because she didn't want to hear how smart I was, how well I was liked, how far I had, the abilities I had, the potential I had. She didn't want to hear it because she felt like that rising above your raising both of those are examples of a child trying to rise above the level of poverty or whatever abuse that they're in and keep getting dragged back down.
And Leah, you're an educator and you probably looked at this more than I have, but I wonder if in sort of all societal groupings, this is a problem, right? Because I'm just like almost putting it into the frame of the adaptive and Paralympic sports community, which is really we're just part of the disabled community.
Right.
And there is this sort of line of thought that Paralympians don't represent us. They're so capable, and they're on this whole nother level that they don't really represent the disability community, which I think is so fascinating because if you break down their stories, like we're going to break yours down, it's the same damn story as anybody else down the street that has MS. Like your journey isn't any different. You just chose a path of sport and you were rewarded because you were good. But so but it's like, it is like if you sort of punched above your pay grade.
Yes.
Right. It's like, oh, you're not one of us anymore. Right.
Exactly. And I do see that not so much in the disabled communities that I'm in here in lacrosse, because I actually played on a sled hockey team with 25 little kids because there were no adults and I was grandma goalie. But the life lessons and those children were born congenital or whatever, acquired very early in their life. So they weren't like the adults that I meet now, or even the older kids that have something traumatic happen and then they enter into a disability. But those kids, I looked around at them and I'm like, I've been here for 4 years and I've never seen one of you anywhere. And our town is not that big. And so then the parents started saying, well, sometimes it's easier and faster. And I'm like, no, for who? I'm sorry. You ask me a question or you make an excuse. My coach says, if I open my mouth, the truth falls out. It just does. And I'm like, that's not helpful. And then they wonder why they don't want to go away to college. Well, they graduate and we'd really like them to go away. Well, you didn't even take them to the grocery store. What do you expect? And yes, I think they see that differently. But within the archery community, when I first started archery, it was the able-bodied archers and the para archers, and there was a huge chasm in between them.
Yep.
And in the last 5 years, that has completely flipped. And I would like to think it's partially because of my leadership, because I can talk to anybody. Because they were uncomfortable talking to people in wheelchairs on the shooting line. They were uncomfortable asking, how can I help you? Or there were paras that were rude. Like, I can get my own dang arrows, that kind of stuff. And it's y'all need to play nice, because guess what? It's our playground. It's all of us. It's for everybody.
At the end of the day, it's one team. It's Team USA. Right.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. So that has completely flipped. And it also helps that in 2018, Matt Stutzman, the young man with no arms, won the National Outdoor Championships in the able-bodied division. In 2017, in the final, quarterfinals in the men's open outdoor able-bodied, out of 12, 4 of them were paras.
Right.
So right now I am in the top 12 of the able-bodied masters women archers in the United States.
Right.
And I'm a quad.
I love it.
It's just crazy. And here's the really, really cool thing. So I was just elected as an athlete rep to the USOPC for the able-bodied team. For the first time in the history, they chose a woman in a wheelchair to represent their best interest at the USOPC.
Right.
It's never been done before.
I love that. I didn't know that.
Because
Congratulations.
those barriers are coming down. We're more alike than we are different.
I love it. Okay, so I didn't expect all of this childhood stuff, which is incredible to hear. And I know people coming from poverty, right, and challenged environments like that will really appreciate your journey. So high school, right? You're thinking about the rest of your life at 18. You're going to graduate in theory, right? You're smart. You should graduate. Like, how did high school look? And then how do you make the decision to join the military?
Well, most of the people, when I started working at 14 as a waitress, and I worked 2 jobs or 3 jobs all the way through high school. I did not participate. People that I went to high school with don't even know who I am because I was shadow. I was the shadow. I knew better than to be the star because that would cause problems back at home. But I sure wasn't a schmuck either, and I wasn't going to mess things up either with legal or medical or whatever, smoking, whatever. That, getting pregnant, that wasn't something I wanted either. I knew if I wanted a better life, what I wanted to be was a police officer, because every single time those guys would come and my dad would be, have a gun at our heads or beating the daylights out of my mom. And those cops were so.
That's your dad or your stepdad? That's your dad.
No, my dad. Yes. So, complete chaos at home, and they brought the chaos. And the thing is in the 70s, he never went away for more than a night because my mom was terrified to press charges. Because what is a paper? She'd get a restraining order and he'd come through and beat us all worse. It was a never ending cycle. And I didn't want to be in that cycle. I wanted to be that police person that helped kids like I was. That's why I joined the military. But I actually did my senior year on my own because my mom kicked me out because she stopped getting food stamps and money for me because I aged out. So she said, you're not staying here. You need to leave. You need to quit school and get.
Before you turn 18, you age out of food stamps.
And whatever medical or whatever. And our house was crowded. We had a lot of kids, and nope. Actually, every one of us 4 older kids were kicked out before we were 18 because the level of food stamps or whatever they're getting, or whatever commodities, was not enough. So either we had to drop out of school, and that's what I meant. I mean, I've been paying rent since I was 14 years old.
Like you were paying your mother's rent in 14.
Yes, all of us did that. So, yeah. So anyway, my guidance counselor in high school, I was probably a BC student in high school, but they all knew, you can just meet me and tell I'm not a dumb person.
But that was you working 2 or 3 jobs and not really focused on school, right? That's like
and they knew that.
Mailing it in. You're like,
yeah, and they're like, kids in my class are talking college or tech school or whatever, and I knew I didn't have money, and I knew I did not have the study skills to take me there. So the military, ironically, my biological dad is a Navy vet. His dad was in World War II. So the Coryell family, this is going to blow your mind, Clayton. So the picture of George Washington crossing the Delaware in that boat? You know the one I'm talking about? That boat's Coryell's ferry. That is my 5th great grandfather in the Revolutionary War, was a captain in George Washington's army. And we have had a Coryell or our children in every single decade since then, including my son who served in Iraq.
Wow.
So patriotism was there, whether you knew how to take care of your family or not. That's a whole nother ballgame. But I knew the military was an in for me that would get me out of my community, that would get me ahead, that would get me educational benefits, housing benefits, medical benefits. Those are things I was thinking at 16, 17 years old. My brother Gary also went into the military, and I would do it all over again.
Well, people join the military for a whole host of reasons, right? But for you, I mean, as you were just listing all of those things, it's like a sort of life organizing system.
It's a rope. It's a lifeline.
It's everything, because it is. It has to be everything.
It is. Right? Where else can you get that?
And you didn't. And you literally had none of that before.
Oh, so I'm glad I did it. it has changed obviously since I've been in, but when my son wanted to enlist at 17, I was like, what do you want to do? And he said he wanted to be an infantryman. And I'm like, I won't sign for you to be an infantryman. I understand if that's what you feel you need to do, but I'm not going to sign. You'll have to wait till you're 18, because both of my kids graduated from high school earlier. So he talked to all the guys that I worked with at the university. He was their little brother. He his whole teenage year was spent with these people he just worshipped. And they're like, no, you're not going to be an infantryman. You're going to be a doc. You're going to be a medic. And he's like, why would I want to be a medic? I want that brotherhood. And they're like, save somebody's life, you will always have a brotherhood. And so he was. He's actually a very decorated combat medic.
Wow.
So, and my brother Gary was a sapper, and I just think the military gives you people said, oh, how can you go in the military? They're going to yell at you. They're going to call you names. And I'm like, really? What else you got? Seriously, what's the worst that could happen? And it was because it was fair.
You're like, yeah, bring it on. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fair. It was absolutely fair. It was good.
All right. So you graduate from high school, you join the military, maybe even a little young or before you're done with high school, or how did that work?
The day after I graduated from high school, I left on the bus.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that experience, and then, kind of the diagnosis, and how did that go down?
Well, I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey, first, which was pretty cool. I got to ride in an airplane, was pretty stoked about that. Got through basic.
Wait, was that your first airplane ride?
Ever. That was the first time ever out of the state of Wisconsin, other than Minnesota.
What?
Crazy. Yeah. Where are we gonna go? We got nothing.
Oh my gosh.
Unless it's in a stolen car, we're not going anywhere. My mom never drove. So you have to think about growing up. So I am the first female in my family to not only drive, but to graduate from high school ever. Male or female, on both my mom and my biological dad's side, ever. And I told you how far back that goes.
Wow.
Crazy, right? So yeah, it just was. So Fort Dix was cool. I liked basic training. I liked the physicalness of it. I liked the closeness. I liked the teamwork. And then I went to AIT, which is the schooling. So I joined to be an MP, and needs of the Army took over. It was when Grenada was going on. So they switched my job to be a truck driver. Nothing I could have been a cook or a truck driver. And I'm like, I've been cooking my whole life. I don't want to be a cook. So I ended up being a truck driver, sucked at it, whatever. I broke my leg in a training exercise, ended up getting surgery on it, the whole knee, and it never came back. The nerves never regenerated. I always had a limp, and they could not figure out what it was. And they figured it was neurological, but couldn't really get a grasp on it. And then we got vaccines. And I think one of them was anthrax. And a whole bunch of the girls in the same barracks that I was in got sick. So they thought it was meningitis, because that's pretty common in like communal living areas.
Wow.
And it wasn't. It was a bad batch of vaccines.
And so, you got the same bad vaccine.
It seemed like it was the women, but you got to remember, military grade vaccines are not the same as civilian. And they needed it like that. So it had something to do with a woman's menstrual cycle, something with that. But yeah.
Why were they vaccinating? Was it like to prepare for war? Were they worried about war?
Yes. And the anthrax just showed up, and they're like, whoa, we got to figure out something to do with this. So it gave us autoimmune diseases. Not everybody got MS. Some people got lupus. Some people got Parkinson's. Some people got, I can't think of the other one.
But like if you go through all the women that were in your troop or whatever, they all got something.
Those of us got sick, yes. And I think there's probably less than 20 of us left alive. And I'm 56.
Holy cow.
Yeah. But the more I work with younger vets that are coming through the system, that happens a lot more than you'd like to think. I worked with 2 kids at UW Milwaukee that lost their feet because of a bad smallpox vaccine gave them something vasculitis, and they lost their feet, and they were on the same ship.
Holy cow.
So there is risk, but there's risk in everything, Clayton. You know?
Of course, but just the idea that there's lower grade vaccines for the military, like, you're blowing my mind. Wow. Okay, so after the vaccine, then
I got sick, and they meted me out because I couldn't run. I really couldn't do anything. So
you like immediately were so sick, you were like, you were done.
Yeah, and they med boarded me out, medically retired me
Yeah.
at 19, and then I could have went anywhere, and for the life of me, I don't know why I came back to lacrosse. I came back to where my dysfunctional family was, a
Oh,
place I never wanted to go to again.
okay. All right. Hold on. So, but do they diagnose you with MS at that point?
No, they diagnosed me within a year of getting out, because then I got sick again. Nobody gets meningitis twice.
Ah,
So
so
the
it was a
VA actually,
misdiagnosis.
yes.
Initially, it was a misdiagnosis. Well, they it was
They didn't know
diagnosed.
it was MS. They said it was something neurological. Maybe it was meningitis or encephalitis or
Yep.
something, some
Sure.
kind of swelling and scarring in the brain. And then within the first 2 years of being in college, it happened again. And they're like, yeah, you have lesions all over your brain. You have MS, relapse remitting. And I did live a really productive, successful life for many, many years. I would get sick, I'd lose vision, or I'd limp, but I usually rebounded. But the older I got, the less that happens. It is not uncommon for people with relapse remitting MS to become progressive after 20 or 30 years.
Let's take a quick break to learn more about the Equipment Loaner Program at Angel City Sports.
Part of our mission at Angel City Sports is to eliminate all barriers to participation in adaptive sports. Providing free adaptive sports equipment is a major component to this objective. Each individual piece of equipment can cost more than $3,000. Can you imagine if running shoes cost that much? So we're building an inventory of adaptive sports equipment to support our clinics, competitions, partner programs, and to loan out to emerging local athletes. Currently, we have racing wheelchairs, throwing chairs, and sport wheelchairs, perfect for tennis and basketball. If you or an athlete you know need a piece of adaptive sports equipment, visit the Equipment Opportunities page at angelcitysports.org. If you are interested in donating equipment or supporting the Equipment Loaner Program, email us at info@angelcitysports.org.
At some point, you get this diagnosis that you have progressive MS, right? So what's going on there? What
So
happened?
at 40, I went back to school and I got my degree in secondary education, social studies, psychology, and I have a degree in information or library and information science and research because I'm a geek. So I was working in the high school doing stuff on the side. I went back to graduate school. And that's when they asked me, you're going to laugh at this. So they asked me, they figured out I was a vet because I was on vet educational benefits. And what was I, 45 years old? And they said, we need a vet to sit on the student veterans council on campus. And I'm looking around, I'm like, I'm an old woman. I've never been to combat. I'm a private. I'm sure you have combat vets here somewhere. Oh, no. So they asked me to sit on this council. And what I was a token. I was a token student vet. I'm like, oh, no. So tell me more about this student veteran committee. Well, I find out that there's a 2% graduation rate. Out of all the veterans that enroll, 2% graduated. I'm like, well, how many vets you got? Well, comptroller says there's 1,500. That's millions of tuition dollars on this campus. They have no support system and only 2% of them graduating. Not on this mama's watch, not happening. So I put up a sign that said free tacos for veterans. And I had like 600 show up. I didn't have enough tacos. I didn't know there
Just
was
to get a free lunch or something?
Well, yeah, because vets, the thing is when veterans are on council, my son even says this, when you're on campus or when you get out of the military, you feel like you're the only one because you've left your brotherhood or sisterhood or unit or whatever, and nobody seems to get you, and you're not really looking outside of yourself. So you could be in a class with 5 other vets and they wouldn't even know it.
Well, but I mean, literally what you just said sounds like you're describing disability.
Yes.
Same feeling, even though maybe
Yes.
sometimes disability is easier to identify, but like it's the same feeling, right?
Well, let's talk ADHD in student vets, since that's where my study is.
Mhm.
So the number of especially young men that go into the military that have ADHD, even though they can't claim it, is over 80%. because they're fighters, they're warriors, they're hunters. They are drawn to that type of job. Well, and some of them go because they want to get the educational benefits. So they come out, even though they were ADHD, whether diagnosed or not in high school, and they put them in a college classroom. It is an invisible disability because now their whole brain matter has changed because they've been in war. So the amygdala and the hippocampus flip, so they're always in fight or flight or freeze.
And their brain
always.
matter was probably already under chronic stress and through childhood, which has a lasting impact, and it's hard to reverse. So it's like it compounds now.
So does that mean that only 2% of them should graduate? No, this is what I said, shame on you. Shame on you. This is a sham that you have this veterans program or a committee that has done nothing, and I'm the best you can do for a veteran. So I actually led a rebellion at the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee campus to get a support center for student veterans. And I had to prove that they were their own culture. They have their own language, they have their own hierarchy, they have their own symbols, they have their own, work within it. There's so many support centers needed on campus, but this one was needed too. So the chancellor said, if you can find a room to have it in, we'll set it up for you. And so the guy at the student union said, we don't have any rooms available. So I used what I had. I sat outside his door doing my homework, and every time somebody go by, they're like, oh, can I help you? No, my name's Leah. I'm a student vet. We need to get a student veterans, support center here on campus. So, the chancellor says there's no room. So I'm just waiting for a room to open up. It took less than 2 days, and he was like, get her a room. And we had one in 2 days. And we built it from scratch.
That's so cool.
So now, yeah. So I actually.
And what happened to the graduation rate?
It is going up. It is going up because now, when I started I started a group called Student Veterans in America. And again, I'm a graduate student, but every University of Wisconsin, college or university, because of that, has a student veteran center on campus. That has a VA counselor available, that has, get them appointments through the VA or, benefits counseling, or even things in the community. There's a fly fishing organization that used to come in on Thursday nights, and I would bring in cookies or whatever, and they would teach the guys kind of as a meditation thing to make fishing flies. And they loved it. One time we had the horticulture club come in and we did, healing plants, aloe and ivy for growth and bamboo for prosperity. And, it's amazing. But at one point, that's when Shooters on Campus started. And so we had to have a Shooter on Campus meeting of, the people at the head of this department to come up with a plan. So I rolled into the meeting, and the police guy looked at me. He said, oh, I'm glad you're here because it's probably going to be one of your guys. You did not just say that. I said, are you nuts? Because if you want anybody to protect the people and your staff on this campus, there's nobody better prepared or trained than those student vets. They are your best bet because they will run toward it, not away from it.
Right.
So guess every school in the state of Wisconsin, every higher education, now their task force for Shooter on Campus is student vets.
As it should be.
So that's where I learned to lead, Clayton.
Wow.
I'm like, are you guys, I'm a private. I've never been to combat. I felt like I was a flunky, and they're like, Leah, you stood on that line and you said, I will protect and defend this country. It is not your fault what happened. We want you to lead us. You. So I did. That's how I learned to lead.
And is that when you get diagnosed with progressive MS?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Like I said, I woke up one day, was using a walker, a lot of pain in my legs, ended up in the hospital. They thought it was another exacerbation, started all the medicine, came in one day and turned it off. And the doctors came in and they said, there is nothing more we can do. Nothing. It is now progressive. Tomorrow will never be better than today. In fact, we're going to put you in palliative care. So no more PT, no more OT, no more MS medications, nothing, because there's nothing that's going to cure this. It's too late. It's too far. So you need to get your affairs in order. And I wanted to die.
What? And how old are you? When was that?
46 years old. 46 years old. It would have been in 2014. And didn't go to work. I didn't do anything. I stayed home and tried not to die. I tried not to get too hot or too sweaty or be around too many people or overtax myself because I wanted to live. And in the meanwhile, my kids are watching me die because I'm a social person. So the student vets are like, we need you back here on campus. Can you come back? And they got invited to this adaptive sports program by the DOD and the VA out in San Diego, the summer sports program. You never see people with MS invited to those.
Right.
Never. And I don't know why. It burns me. You never see people with MS referred to sport. Maybe meditation or yoga, never sport. And it's not right. So anyway.
I agree with you 100%. I think this is I would just call it from a business standpoint, an untapped customer segment.
and Parkinson's, and these guys my brother that were in the first Desert Storm and Desert Strike, they have neurological issues too. They could totally benefit from sport, but you never see those referrals. They don't even know. I didn't even know, and I had a degree in rec therapy. I had no idea there was a thing as a Paralympics. None. Yeah. Or that they had these awesome warrior programs and the Endeavor Games. I had no idea, and I had a degree in it.
So, oh my gosh. So what year did you do that San Diego camp?
I went in 2014 because the guys that were on campus that were in wheelchairs wouldn't go because they said they weren't disabled. And I'm like, well, you are in a wheelchair. I'm not saying you're disabled. And they're like, well, why aren't you going then? So where Mama Duck goes, the baby duck follows. So I went to San Diego with the boys. And we went to all these different adaptive things. And of course, wheelchair basketball, track and field. No, none of that was me. But we got to archery. And it was I could do it. And it was like, I like this. I can do this. They had to tape my hand to the riser and, give me a different thing. But I'm like, I really liked it. And the lady I didn't know it at the time, but the people that were hosting some of those sports things were looking for talent for the 2016 Paralympic Games. But we didn't know that. So the coach said, would you like to come back next year? Would you like to come to an archery camp for beginner archers? And I'm like, yes, because by this time I had decided when I got back, I was going to retire from the university. So I'm like, yeah, I can get after this. So I went to a couple of camps. And then she said, you need to get classified. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And one of the guys on the team was kind of a jerk. And he said, well, that's the only reason you're here is because you're so messed up. I'm like, what do you mean? And I had just gotten comfortable with the fact that I didn't have to hide and wait for my life to be over. And he tells me this. And of course, everybody jumped him and they're like, what are you doing, dude? I'm like, what does that mean? She's like, you will be classified as a W1, which is the most impaired class. He's not joking. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm just got comfortable with where I am and where this is going. I don't want to do it where I'm, the most messed up. And she said, her name is Randy Smith. And she said, Leah, you have an opportunity to change people's lives. This is your chance to have a platform for people that the throwaway kids that you always talk about, the throwaway people, you have a chance to change their lives by leading by example. Why would you walk away from that?
But it's but you point to one of the really, I don't know what the right word is. It's one of the complexities of elite Paralympic sport, which is athletes have to be organized and they're put into these classes, and it creates all kinds of challenges once you're in a class, whether you're in the right class, and right? Yes. There's all drama there. But there's also a problem that we haven't solved, which is how do we communicate that to prospective athletes? Because you and I might have had a very similar conversation. I might not use those exact words, but I would have said, listen, you're so good already without any training, and you're in the best class possible, right? Meaning you're competing against people that are severely impaired, and they are probably going to have trouble being as good as you. So this is a blessing. I would have created, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's where my brain goes when you're like, oh, it's the most impaired class. I'm saying that's probably why you're right. That's why you're successful, right? Is that you got put in the right class and you're able to compete fairly and you're kicking butt. Like,
yeah,
so
once she said that, it switched a little bit, but it still hung with me, and I was still at that point still struggling with being in the chair full time.
So
And
that
not
was
being
that was like soon after the chair became your life.
Yes, because when I went in 2014, I didn't need to be in it all the time, but by 2015, I was.
So,
So,
all right, I want to continue on the sport journey, but I got to backtrack for a second.
Mhm.
Somehow, after this progressive diagnosis, it seems like you really slide into a depression,
big
right?
time.
Where you're being told you're going to die. You're not given the support
Yep.
to even attempt a comeback. How did you get out of that? Like, I can't just let you gloss that over. Like, how did you get out of that? Because you're clearly out of that. You didn't die. You're here.
I know, but it was a really dark place. And my kids, I think Cassidy, Joey especially, it was really hard for him to watch that, but we were all devastated because literally I thought if I did anything, I was gonna die. And then I went to the archery thing and I asked the kids, I said, I think I want to try this. I think maybe I don't want to die, because here I am trying not to die but I'm not living.
That I'm going to die framework.
Yes, definitely. And Joey, bless his heart, he also is one who opens his mouth and the truth falls out. And he said, I think you should absolutely go for it, Mom. I said, really? But what if it makes me sicker? He said, Mom, you're going to die anyway. We're all going to die anyway. That's what happens in life. So why would you not do it?
What Joey said, I think, points to maybe a misperception around MS.
Mhm.
So would doing more physical activity accelerate your death?
That's what I was told.
But it's not true, right?
No, not anymore. But you got to remember that was in 2015. That wasn't even that long ago. I was told not to.
But
Yes.
it should elongate your life, right?
Yep. Well, they're talking about don't overtax yourself or don't raise your body temperature. Don't be around a lot of people because of your immune system. Yeah, it was heartbreaking with that diagnosis. And I literally tried not to die, but I was dying anyway. And my kids were freaking watching it.
So to say it in another way for people that are listening, if you know someone with MS, there's a way you can navigate physical activity that doesn't accelerate the decline and maybe staves it off. But you got to just be careful about it.
And it's funny because we now have 2 more women that are on the archery team that have MS, and I recruited them, and I continue to recruit them, and I'm very active on social media. I'm very active, giving talks because people need to know the fallacy behind, I think civilian MS doctors are ahead of that wave. Like, yes, you need to exercise, you need to be out, you need to be socially and mentally engaged, but the VA, I need to just say it, the VA doctors are pretty old school.
But I don't know that the civilian docs are that much farther ahead because I don't see a lot of MS, folks out doing adaptive sports anywhere, regardless of military or civilian status. And I also see the same messaging in a lot of the other communities that physical activity is a negative and it's, the risks are all that, right? It's like, it's all about like risk management for these.
Yes, risk management.
And so like to tell someone that's had a stroke or traumatic brain injury or spinal cord injury or whatever, they shouldn't be physically active.
Yeah, I know.
Feels really contrary to reality when we see it. Because right in our community, there's these beautiful, healthy, vibrant human beings that happen to have had something happen to them, but they're not going down in any way.
Well, I have lost function, a lot of function, but who's to say it wouldn't have went faster if I had not? And that was Joey's point.
Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah. Why are you so afraid to live? Those were his words. Why are you so afraid? What's the worst that's going to happen if you push through this archery thing? It doesn't work out, and sitting here in this dark apartment crying all the time is going to be, he's like 15 years old.
Another wise beyond his years kid that we know.
yes, and he's like, why wouldn't you? So I'm like, he was right. So I tried, and I have lost function.
Thank you for clarifying that. So in terms of you sort of coming out of that, right, that framework that was pretty harsh, right, way to look at yourself and your life, sport actually becomes a part of that journey out of that. And,
yes, it definitely does.
and in 2 years, you go from shooting your first bow
Yeah.
to the Paralympic Games, right? So how did you do that? Because that seems extraordinary to me.
Well, it's crazy that I actually made the world championship team for Germany in 2015. And in 2016, I made the Rio Paralympic team before I ever made the national team, because the trials are all different. And I need to say, part of it was because I'm the only W1, but I still have to shoot a qualifying score. And people say, well, yeah, of course you did. You're the only one. It doesn't work that way. You
Yeah,
still
it doesn't matter if you're the only one. You still have to hit your percentile or however it
yeah,
works.
it's called an MQS. You still have to hit the MQS. But in 2015, I actually traveled to Colorado Springs and trained there, thinking that I could just move there and train at the Olympic Training Center because I wanted to be a Paralympian. It didn't work out that way either. So I went with another woman on the team, and I trained there for 8 months, came back home, and I just shot and shot. And for me, the rhythm and the cadence and the timing of archery has been so healing, not only for me, but for so many people, even if you don't compete or not, because you cannot think of anything else. I see Ezra do this too when he gets ready to do his jumps, just that. And nothing else matters because you're just in the moment. And that is what a gift.
Mm.
If I didn't compete in sport, I would never have that peace. That peace in my mind at that moment. I would never have it. It's amazing.
I don't know archery. I've shot maybe a few times. I've watched it a lot, and I think it's really interesting. So for you, it has like a meditative,
Yes,
like a calming, which is great for your nervous system, right? That's really good for you.
it really is. And that's the crazy thing, is I've lost a lot of function from when I started in 2015 until now, but we've adapted along the way. You will never see me season to season shooting the same bow or with the same splints or the same whatever, because we're always having, as I lose function, but I get stronger in my mind. My strength is in my brain. My strength is, I'm going to, as my abilities slide, my personal bests and records go up. How does that even happen? It happens because I believe I can.
But by the way, that's amazing. And it's unusual. When you look at all the Paralympic sports,
Yep.
there aren't that many, and I should probably do my research and figure out how many could even be in that same category, right? Because so many of them are about sort of pure physical prowess.
Yes. But
That
archery is
got
not that.
reclassed, right? Unless you kind of slid down a class, which you can't because you're at the last one.
Yeah.
You couldn't keep improving your results as your
Right.
ability slips, right?
Right. But that's our mind, Clayton, there is so much strength and power in our mind that is untapped. Yes. Do I have to be able to do the physical movements? Yes. Are they difficult, and are they getting more difficult? Yes, they are. But you know what? My mind tells me this is what I need to do. This is what your process is. And I swear it was that mind, that voice inside me as a child hiding in the closet that said, you're smarter than this. You're stronger than this. You are never going to live this life when you grow up because you don't want it. You can do better. Here I am 50 years later. You're smarter than this. You're stronger than this. You can do better. It's still there. That's that rebel child.
I mean,
That's the only way to explain it.
I mean, who in a million years would think that the I'm going to call it dysfunctional childhood, if that's okay with you, becomes one of your sort of secret strengths in the Paralympic journey. It's like, right? It's like, because you're forced to be resilient when you have a disability. You just like, there's no, like there's no way around that. You have to figure things out, right? Because the world wasn't meant for you. But you were kind of already prepared for that world because of your childhood. You were ready to.
I think it all boils down to identity. And I see this a lot in adaptive sports, especially those of us that are injured later in life. We have this whole idea of how our life is going to be, and we have it all planned out. We're going to do this in our job, and boom, catastrophically, it's gone. And you become broken. That's how I felt, that I was broken now. I had no worth. because I couldn't still work at the university. I couldn't see well enough to work on my graduate papers. I see it with the guys coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. I see it with the teenage boys that are now paralyzed because they rolled their truck. I see it, with people that have had strokes or children, mostly kids with that seem to grow up, they're resilient. They are very, very resilient because they know who they are from the beginning. There's a girl on our team and her name is Emma Rose Radish, and she was born without legs, like no legs. Let me tell you about resilience. This child is a resilient. So she got a job, her first job ever, at the Nike store, and the USOPC system helped her to get in. Nobody would hire her. So she works at the Nike store, and when she's in training with all the rest of the kids and they say, okay, this week we're going to do shoes, and Emma Rose, you don't have to do shoes. And she said, oh, yes, I am. I've had a shoe envy my whole life. I am the perfect shoe salesman because I have no biases. That's resilience.
There you go.
That's what I'm talking about. But I don't know that somebody my age or was injured later in life would have that strength like that right out of the gate.
No, I think you're right. And I often talk about the two paths of congenitals and those in the acquired, right? And by acquired, I mostly mean,
a good word.
Think acquisition of disability ramps up when you become an adult, right? There are some kids that acquire, but many don't remember before. So it's really kind of like congenital versus acquired. And I agree with you. I think that the adults who acquire a disability really struggle. And if I had to, and listen, it overlaps with the veteran community as well, for sure. But I just think if everything else was equal, if kids weren't cuter, right? Whatever, right? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like the resources should actually go towards adults. They are very hard to convince to come out to do anything. Like, I mean, you probably know enough about me, but I literally chase people down that I see in the public.
So do I. My kids are so embarrassed.
Whatever. I don't know, but the beauty is if you do it enough, people around you will learn how to do it, and then they will do it themselves, right? Because we're leading by example when we do that. Listen, once in a while you get yelled at and you get shooed away, but mostly people are cool, right? So, but I don't know, it's so much work. It's so much emotional energy. I probably have 100 people in my phone right now that have never showed up for anything that I've met out in public. And I'll just when I think about them, I'll text them and they just blow me off. So I think that's really, if there's one thing that we can bring out of this show is, right, helping people get through that dark period and kind of, start moving back up, because life can be just as full and just as exciting, if not more so. And you're kind of proof in the pudding, this thing obviously was with you your whole life and your whole adult life and a part of your identity, but then it knocked you down.
In hindsight, I did not become the leader and the champion for people and the motivator until my butt was 18 inches off the ground and there was nothing I could do about it. That's when I assumed leadership, because this 18 inches can reach around the world.
Well, I'm going to give you a different perspective because I think that's true, but I feel like you had the characteristics in you from an early age because you were a leader in your family. And that was a difficult environment to be a leader in, and you had to be crafty and clever and hide things and all that stuff. But you actually were leading from an early age.
Yes.
Your desire to maybe turn it into sort of this broader sort of community, right, where you're looking at finding strangers and people you didn't know, maybe that clicks later on. But everything you're saying that you did as a kid is the same thing you're doing now.
It didn't feel like leading, it felt like surviving.
Yeah, but surviving was
now I see it.
Surviving was taking care of you. You were taking care of the rest of the crew behind you. So
yeah, that's true.
I'm giving you a little credit, a little love for that.
I'd like to take a quick break to show you how you can get involved as a volunteer with Angel City Sports.
Are you interested in supporting Angel City Sports? We're seeking volunteers to help organize clinics and events, as well as support our athlete outreach efforts, marketing and media, and even fundraising and development. All skill sets and backgrounds are welcome in support of our mission to provide free adaptive sport opportunities for children, adults, and veterans with physical disabilities or visual impairments. For our younger athletes, we welcome you to join the Angel City Youth Leadership Council. Middle and high school age students are eligible to join the Youth Leadership Council, where you will learn about the disabled community by working side by side with our athletes and acquire important skills such as teamwork, leadership, philanthropy, and event management. To sign up for our volunteer newsletter and stay up to date on all upcoming opportunities, visit angelcitysports.org.
All right, so talk to me about Tokyo, how training's going, and just like where your head is at, knowing that you kind of lost a year, right? Or gained a year, depends on how you look at it, I guess.
Well, when COVID first started last spring, I think it was April or May, I got really sick and ended up in the hospital with heart failure. And I'm like, how can that even happen? I'm quarantined. And it's called pericarditis. It's an infection around the lining of your heart. I'm like, I haven't been around anybody. And I was depressed and isolated. I'm a social butterfly. I was depleted. And I'm like, how can I be sick? And they said, it's your body. It's an autoimmune response to stress. Literally, my heart was broken because of isolation. It's a thing. So I had to go through all this, cardiac rehab stuff. And the summer was pretty good.
When they postponed the games?
Yeah. And I was in isolation. I live in an 800 square foot apartment. And that's when it was like everybody was scared of everything. Even, my nieces and nephews would leave food outside the door. Zoom wasn't really set up and anything, but I was heartbroken, absolutely heartbroken, and probably ready to just give up fighting the whole MS thing then. I mean, literally, my heart was broken. I was in heart failure. So I get through that, thankfully, with my team and the sports, my coaches. The summer was okay because I could go out to my range and I was the only one. And I would spend 8-10 hours out there just so I didn't have to come back here. Then November 6th.
That range was open for you, at least. So was it open for the public?
No, because it's on an Army base. And I have special dispensation to shoot on their pistol range when it's not in use. So because I'm wounded military, retired medical, and they're like, if you want to use it, you can use it. I would pack up and I'd be gone all day. But in November, I started getting heart palpitation and back pain. So I thought I had pericarditis again, but it was COVID. So came home, a little trouble breathing, had a nebulizer and oxygen. And then I went back 2 weeks later, got the negative test. And within 3 days, I was back in the hospital. I had bacterial pneumonia in both of my lungs. And I was in heart failure and I was in kidney failure.
That's all a side effect of COVID?
Yep. After COVID is when it hit me. So sick. And again, I'm like, I haven't even seen anybody. When you have an autoimmune disease, it attacks itself. That's why people were dying of COVID. Right. So I finally get out of the hospital, doing better at home. And I wake up one morning and I had shingles all over the side of my face, like big blisters of the shingle thing. And I'm like, great. Got calamine lotion, whatever. And I went septic. It had a staph infection in it, in my blood. I literally fought for my life for from November until the middle of January, until a month ago. I was, teetering that line between life and death for 10 weeks.
So you were in the hospital for 10 weeks?
No, I was in and out because it was a VA hospital. It was a VA hospital. So, they only have so many beds. So, and I would prefer to be home than in the hospital because I'm a social person. They don't even have Wi-Fi. Like I would just lay in that bed and listen to the machines. I couldn't talk to anybody. Everybody that came in was masked up. It was awful. It was like being on a spaceship. I felt like ET. So I have been shooting 9 feet in my little hallway there since January. And on the 21st, I actually was accepted as a resident athlete to go to Chula Vista for 3.5 weeks to train.
Oh,
yes.
Shooting in your hallway, in your apartment.
Yeah, 9 feet. But you know what? When you pull back a bow, it doesn't know it's only going 9 feet. That arrow doesn't know it's going 9 feet.
What kind of target do you need, though, to make sure the arrow doesn't go through the wall?
Well, yeah, apparently I was disturbing my neighbor when it kept hitting the wall, and I got a naughty note on my door. So now there's a pillow behind it. But yeah, it's it's a block target, so you can turn it different ways. Because I wear it out quite a bit, but I'm just working on building my strength. I'm excited to go to the. So they've never had para archers. This is the cool thing. As an older woman, I'm 56. I'm closer to 60 than 50. They've never had a para archer resident athlete anywhere. So who are the first two people? Me and Martha Chavez, who's also 56. We are the first para archers to be resident athletes. And we're both over 50.
That's so cool.
Yes. And then we have Mexico, and then, our season starts.
So it's been a crazy year for you then.
Yes.
The games are postponed. It breaks your heart.
Yep, literally.
Training. You almost die.
Several times, yes.
Several times. And here you are. I am so sorry. I didn't know about all of this medical journey you've been in the last month.
Oh, it was.
But I commit to getting your cell phone number after this and staying in better touch with you. But dang, that is a crazy story. So knowing that you almost died multiple times, does that make Tokyo a little more exciting for you? Like, are you more motivated now?
I'm totally motivated. This is my golden opportunity, because if they cancel Tokyo, I don't see myself being, let's be realistic. I don't see Paris being in my picture, at least as an athlete. I was the first wheelchair level 4 coach in the United States, which means I can coach any archery team in the world.
Right.
And I was the first person in the chair to do it. So maybe I'll be there as a coach.
I love that. I love that.
I will be involved as long as I am physically able.
I love that. Whew. Dang.
I know, right?
You've dropped a lot of crazy stories on us today. Pretty cool. So this is my favorite part of the show, which is where I dig into your soul a little bit, and I feel like we've been digging the whole way. So this will be easy for you. But I'm going to start with sort of I think it is like the question that I love asking, which is, talk to me about your journey to self-acceptance.
I think it's been a process. I don't think it really started to accept who I was as a person until my heart broke, because that was I've had physical issues all along, but when your heart is broken and you're laying there and you don't know if you're going to live or die, it's like you kind of start to take inventory of what you want to do. And that's where the whole rebel rising, literacy, what am I going to do afterwards? Whether Tokyo happens or not, what's next? What impact have I left? What is my legacy? That's what's critically important to me. And that's what's important. My son, again, Mr. Wiseman, said, Mom, I think you need to finish your PhD, because there's probably a chance you're not ever going to meet my children, and that's okay, because I want to tell them, your grandma, you mean the Paralympian Dr. Leah Coryell, that grandmother? That's what's important.
All right. So I love that answer. So you're covering a couple things for me. So I get the sense of legacy. Then boil it down for me. What do you think your purpose is?
I think my purpose really doesn't have a whole lot to do with archery. It has to do with validating people. Validating those, I speak a lot, and people always say, lifelong accomplished athlete. I'm like, you don't know nothing. You have no, I am not. I've never been on a team until now. I never competed.
Like an athlete, right?
Yeah. Or why couldn't they just say Leah Coryell or whatever? But I think that I want to be remembered as somebody like me when I was a little kid hiding in the closet, or when I was in high school trying to be invisible and thought, if I could go back and talk to me, even when, until I ended up in the wheelchair, I would say, girl, you have no idea where you're going. This is going to work out, because that fire that has been burning in your soul is going to come to smoke, and people are not going to know what happened when you hit that pinnacle.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen. You need to stay strong because it's going to matter to all the other Leahs and Ricks and Garys and Michelles. It's going to matter. And they have no idea what's coming.
Right. Love it. Talk to me about any regrets.
I don't really have a lot of regrets. I try to live my life pretty purposeful. I guess, I don't know. I don't. I can't really think of.
That's good. You're different than me. But let's
You know, I'm trying to think of shame or whatever, but I'm very intentional about the way I live my life. So maybe a regret might be that my archery career has taken time from my children that they'll never get back. You know, it's true. You know, was my disease going to progress this fast if I didn't pursue archery and I just was a stay-at-home mom for them? You know, that's time they can't get back with me that I spent on basically a sport. And how do they feel about that? And I think my daughter Cassidy.
But your kids were older when you found archery, so it wasn't like when they were little you were doing it.
No, but we were very close up until I started archery. And I think there was in the beginning some animosity there. Because they were my whole life.
Right.
Their dad wasn't in their life. It was just us. And all of a sudden, you know, I got started in archery, but they're both doing very, very well. And they're both proud of me. But if I had one regret, it would probably be that.
That's interesting. I just posted on social that I quit surfing when the kids started coming in. I regret that I quit surfing because I felt like at the time it was too selfish. When they're little, it's like it's all they want is you, right? So it's almost like the flip of my regret, which is kind of funny. What I mean, and you've done so much in your life, and I know there's more coming. But what are you most proud of?
I am proud that I raised 2 children who are globally conscious, that are respectful, that question things, that want to make the world a better place, that are very, very conscious of people that are invisible or people that are in the shadows, that they are outspoken. They don't take misguided authority well. I'm very proud of the people that my kids are because that's our future. Do they have disabilities or challenges like we do? No, but they are the biggest proponents of it. It's crazy. So when my son was stuck on a mountain in Pakistan and they couldn't evacuate because of, the gunfire, guys up there start talking about stuff and happened to be archery. And he said, I never have beat my mom at archery. And they're like, you can't beat your mama? He's like, no, she's a Paralympic archer. And the first lieutenant looked at him and he said, Molotov, is your mom's name Leah? And he said, yes, it is. He said, I know your mama. She spoke at West Point. She's an amazing woman in Pakistan.
Dude, I love that story.
That's what I'm talking about. So that guy, even though he was a West Point cadet, saw a woman in a wheelchair do things that people never predicted that she could.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I would imagine that Ezra gets this too, because I do a lot of interviews, because I write a lot of articles, because I try to promote ability and not disability. People say, oh, she just likes the attention, or she's always got to be in front of the camera or whatever. And really it's not. You know what it is? It takes vulnerability to be this honest and raw with somebody. This is courage. And I tell Emma Rose, this is courage to put yourself out there and live your truth.
And
it's not showing off. It's leading by example.
And the purpose of that is to find that little girl with the missing hand in Brazil. Sorry, mixing up my international competitions. Right. The purpose is to draw those people out to realize that they can live a productive, visible, full life and not be in the shadows, right? And live that life unseen. So the purpose is as pure as it gets here.
Exactly. And you know what? It's even kids that, I don't know if you call them disabilities, but I think of the migrant children that I speak to every year that I don't see the same children the next year, or the children that I talk to that are in foster care now. Honey, this isn't your story. You don't have to accept this story, because when you get to a certain age, you get to write your story. You get to make the decisions on what your story is going to look like. This isn't going to be forever. So,
Right.
I think it is definitely maybe not a disability, but it sure isn't an ability when socioeconomic people are compromised like that. I don't know what the word is. Oppressed?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a disadvantage, right?
Disadvantaged youth. Yes, definitely.
Oh, I love it. I love your purpose. I love just your thought of like seeing the unseen, right? Because that was you. Somebody saw you in that library.
And
Right?
neither one of those were longer than a couple months at a time, but it was enough to know. And they said, you are capable of more. You are smart. I didn't think I was smart at all until they said I was smart. I'm smart? Yes,
Yeah.
you're smart. And they would point out little things that they thought I did that were smart.
Yep. All right, I'm gonna close up with a question around what do you feel like because your disability is really different than a lot of people out there. It's even really different than a lot of people with MS. It's been a long time period, and it's had these stages, and like,
Yeah.
what have you learned from your disability that the broader world needs to learn from?
So after Rio in 2018, they came up with a new MS medication called Osefra or something like that. And it's a infusion every 6 months, and it has shown great promise, maybe not in giving back, but in stopping the progression. Huge, So I went to see the neurologist at the VA and said, I would like to try this Osefra. And he literally patted my knee and he said, and actually my coach was with me because we happened to just come from training, and he said, it's too late, Leah. I said, that's the second time people have told me it's too late. It's too far gone. He said, $50,000, you need 2 a year. He said, do you really think that it's fair that you take that money away from the veterans, this new wave of veterans that will have a lifetime of challenges and disabilities on an infusion where somebody who has a disease that's as progressed as yours? It's too late. And I'm like, you do not get to. I was prepared the second time, because the first time they did it is when I ended up in the wheelchair. It's too late. Tomorrow's never going to be better than today. Nobody gets to predict your future.
Right.
Nobody. I don't care if they're a doctor, if they're a specialist, whatever they are, you get to predict your future. You might not have control over all the little stuff, but you get to decide who you're going to be. Am I going to be, hi, my name's Leah, I have MS? Or am I going to be, hi, I'm Leah, I do a lot of talks with children. I try to lead by example. I use archery as a way to meet people and to let people know that they're worthy of success no matter where they started. That's the difference.
So did he end up giving you the drug?
No. Well, actually, they sent out my papers because I filed an appeal to the Mayo Clinic, and they wouldn't even see me. They said they declined to treat, that the disease is too progressed. They don't know me. If COVID didn't break my heart and then try to take my life, that's what I'm saying. Strength is here, not here.
Right.
It's all here in the way you talk to yourself. So if you're having trouble with that, talk to yourself like you're that rebel child. Allow yourself not to be the perfect person or the victim. Allow yourself to be that. I'm going to succeed because they think I can't.
Right.
Rebel with intent.
I love it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, listen, it's been an incredible pleasure to walk through your story the last couple hours. We're gonna have to break this into two episodes, I think. But just so much wisdom, so many nuggets, just a powerful journey that you've had, and I am thrilled to be a spectator and supporter on this next
Thank you.
phase, whatever that entails. Tokyo, Paris, and beyond, PhD, whatever it is. But just thank you so much for your time, and we'll be absolutely watching for you in Tokyo.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So Leah's story really blows me away. That childhood journey and her finding her angel, really, really powerful stuff. And next episode, we talk to Dana Mathewson, a wheelchair tennis star on Team USA who's heading to Tokyo.